Well, hi, everybody. We are going to dive right into our mastermind topic today. And this one's going to be what's happening. And we're going to kind of take a look at what's been happening over the last couple of months. If you joined us a couple months ago, we had a realtor panel and we were talking about some of the things that are happening in the industry. And I think we all know how crazy everything's been with the multiple offers and the long lines at showings and uh, supply shortages, things of that nature. But we really want to talk a little bit more about some of the things we've happened within the last couple of months because we are seeing some definite shifts and changes. And I think the more we understand about what's going on, the more prepared we can be and the more we can do a better service for our clients. So I want to talk real briefly about some of the impacts that we're starting to see a little heavier because of the whole quarantine and COVID-19. We're all starting to really see supply shortage issues. We're starting to see some inflation. And of course, we're also seeing the impact of corporations having allowed their people to work from home. And a lot of them deciding that, you know what, this works pretty good and we're going to keep doing it. So all of those things are impacting our local real estate market. And I wanted to have a little roundtable discussion about what some of you guys are seeing happening. And I want to start with primary purchasers that are purchasing existing homes and some of the things you're seeing with that. Candace, I'm going to kind of reach out to you because we had some really good conversations about some of the stuff that you're seeing. And I wonder if you'd just be willing to share with us some of the things you've seen changes over the last couple of months.
Say unspotlight.
Unspotlight,
Sure.
Teresa.
So, is she trying to do something?
Yeah, you're fine. You're ready.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I
Tell
think
us who you are.
I'm Candace, Charles Ruttenberg Realty. I I work with buyers and sellers, and I find that I'm getting, obviously, like, sellers are all like, oh, I can do this myself, it's no big deal, and they're getting, agents to list it really quick, no problem, house sells, big deal. For the buyer side, though, I'm getting a lot more outreaches of buyers who typically, like, didn't realize they needed an agent. And they're like, so I think I need a buyer's agent because I need help because this is not working. So I'm seeing more of that. I think the biggest thing that surprised me probably the most, even in the last couple of weeks, is I actually started to see things like price drops, which I haven't seen, like, been getting notifications of price drops in ages. I was like, I had to double check my email to make sure I was reading it right. Because I did start seeing those starting to come through. And I think that's a reflection of a lot of homes being overpriced. Diane, I know you commented when I said that, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm seeing them where they're like starting off at 20% over, and then they're expecting more beyond that.
Absolutely.
I'm starting to hear more sellers, agents concerned about appraisals, because those prices are getting so hyperinflated. I actually just got a text as we were getting on here that one of my buyers lost on their bidding war for a property. And I asked what the reason was and what the better offer was, and her response was no appraisal. And I'm like, well, that's interesting because it was going to appraise out, so I wasn't really sure what that. But then she came through with, oh, it was cash and it's a higher price, but I'll let you know if it falls through. The other thing I'm seeing is a lot of properties keep coming back on the market. I'm sure everybody's kind of noticed that. And I almost feel like there's more of that now. Like, I feel like there's been an increase of that even just in the last month or two. I have one buyer, I showed her 15 places. We put in, I think it was 5 or 6 offers. We lost all of them. And then 2 of them actually came back within a day of each other, saying, hey, the one that we accepted, they either changed their mind, backed out, something's not right. And it was within a couple of days of them accepting it. And so I've had numerous deals this year that have closed been secured and closed. And they were the second choice, like they were the primary. And it's because that first offer is backing out. And I'm seeing a lot of that. And then I talked to the agent. What was
Let
that?
us
I'm sorry.
stop you a second, only because I want to have a little more discussion about that, because I think a lot of us, the Rest members as affiliates, are seeing what appears to us to be more properties back on the market. And I really am glad to hear from you that, we're not just seeing things or imagining things. That's really what's happening.
No, you're not crazy. It is happening.
Well, yeah. So, well, I mentioned that because we've got Rob who deals a little more outside of Pinellas County. And Rob, I want to ask you if you'll jump on real quick a minute. Have you seen that happen as well? More properties falling apart?
Probably not to the degree that you are in the highly congested area. Here, they're pretty much going to fruition once they go under contract. I mean, there's a few that come back, but for the most part, yeah, when you see it go under contract, you move on to the next one.
Okay. And tell us about your market. Tell us a little bit, Rob, about who you are in your market so we kind of have an idea of what you're speaking about.
Yeah, I'm Rob Kenyon. I'm with Century 21 Myers Realty in Northeast Polk County, pretty much working with the edge of Osceola County up to Lake County, Haines City, Davenport, Champions Gate, all the areas that are bedroom community to Disney. We were under a tremendous new housing growth. So that kind of gave us some options. But we're experiencing pretty much everything I'm hearing from everybody else, the same. How do you get that offer ahead of the next guy who's either presenting cash or and in my case, many of mine are coming from the north and they're contingent on the sale of their home. So there's this dilemma of putting offers in that are just getting pushed to the side because they don't weigh up to the guy that's ready to close in 15 or 20 days because of cash. But our area in general is a pretty good mix. And you'd like to think that you could walk them to the new home builders, but therein lies a whole nother issue.
Rob, I'm just going to stop a second to mention the issue that you were talking to me about, and that's the supply shortage on the new construction side has now extended that construction period how long?
In some cases where they used to quote, 4 to 6 months to have you in your home after the signing the contract is now gone as much as 10. And then with the caveat that, hey, anything could happen. It could be as much as 12 months. Not all home builders, but again, it's the ones that have the deeper avenues into their supply chain. But that seems to be the biggest problem is, they can get one phase of the house completed, but, in some cases it comes down to getting the appliances. So just home builders, we've got a lot of infrastructure communities, but nothing's come out of the ground yet.
Okay, and Ben, we need to get the microphone.
Well, I get a microphone here.
And I want Ben to talk to us about what he's seen as far as the investor side of things and our sales falling apart, what's happened over the last 2 months. So tell everybody what you've seen.
Testing. My microphone is my head and shot. There you go. All right. Good morning, guys. I'm Ben Kokenauer with Mangrove Bay Realty. Whether you're buying or selling, remember, Ben, my phone is always on. Microphone in here. I'm make sure it's turned on. How about now? Was that it? It was turned off. All right, there you go. Anyways, all right. Small fish with a non-working microphone and a big C. Circling back. Long story short, one of the top places to hedge for inflation is in real estate. Second best place is gold, and third best place maybe Bitcoin. Don't quote me on that one. But real estate is a great place to put money when you're worried about inflation, especially for long-term holds. So a lot of the competition that I'm hearing stories about from other agents, including myself, is large money going into real estate, specifically to investor rental properties. It's also one of the things I think that's keeping commercial real estate going right now. They had a very, very tough year, but parts of the market are bouncing back very quickly.
Okay. Having said that, I want to discuss a little bit the people now that are buying. There seems to be a different group of people. We've got our typical home buyers that we've had, people retiring and coming to Florida. And then we've also got our group of people that have been able to work remote. And so now they're saying we want to come to move to Florida. Then we've got the little investor, the single guy who says, I'm going to do a 1031 tax exchange from maybe my property in California and go to Florida. And then you've got the bigger investor guys. And then you've got the investment firms that have suddenly, well, I shouldn't say suddenly, they've been down here for a couple years, but there's been a real powerful impact to take over Florida now. And Ben, you were mentioning that you were seeing some of your investors that were used to doing that getting outbid.
That is correct. So there's a couple sides to that piece. So I like the way you broke it into three pieces. So one of my most common clients right now are people moving from New York, California, specifically investors moving 1031 exchange money out of California, out of New York into Florida. So that's very, very common. Obviously, everybody's working from home more now, so pools are very expensive. Everybody wants a pool. Call a pool contractor who gets your house sometime in the next 12 to 14 months to write you an estimate and then schedule work. So it's just slow. But then when we get to the big side, absolutely, the institutional investors are moving to Florida. There's talk of several large financial firms moving offices here to Florida. There's multiple tax benefits, state income tax savings, state income tax savings, for their employees and for themselves included. Hopefully most of them will end up in Miami rather than here. But we're also seeing a lot of investment funds and capital funds backing some of the companies that you'll see. So if you go through some of the tax records and just look, you'll see LLCs with variations in their name by 1 or 2 letters that have bought 500, 1,000 houses in Tampa Bay in the last 12 months. That's those big hedge funds or those big investment funds that frankly we're all competing against. So if you're a small time buyer and you're getting frustrated, just know that you're not crazy. It's okay. You'll eventually find a property, but you are going to compete with some people with deeper pockets than you for some of these properties.
Thank you, Ben, for kind of clarifying that and giving us your update on what's happening in your market. Martha Vasquez, do you have anything you would like to add as far as what you're seeing in the market? You're on mute. You'd have to unmute yourself to talk.
Make sure we're on spotlight.
Not really. It all kind of syncs together there. Inventory's the issue. And lots of buyers that want properties and lots of sellers are scared to move because they don't know where they'll go to.
Yeah, that we had that conversation with every one of you, that if you're dealing with individual sellers and buyers, the seller's fear is if I list, I'm not going to be able to find something to move to. And there's a lot of challenging things happening when it comes to that. So we kind of discussed the issues. I want to talk about what those issues are creating in the market or what I'm seeing. And I think I'm getting a lot of this from having interviewed you guys for this talk today. Because we've got all these investors in the market, I'm going to guess that a lot of these investors are just throwing out offers. They see something come up for sale and they're just going to put an offer in sight unseen. And they're going to put multiple offers in.
That's correct.
Any and every property they see. So now you've got the investors putting in multiple offers. Candace, I believe you shared with me that your buyer was asking, should they do that? You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I really hate, honestly, I really hate doing that just because, can you hear me? You guys
Yep.
hear me? Yes. Okay. My concern, like I always hate doing that because it then makes sellers stuck with a property that, you know, like one of them's going to be stuck with it going back on the market, right? It's really not fair. It's not particularly nice, but the buyers are just getting to a point that they're just like, I'm losing sleep waiting for the sellers who are also playing games. Like they're not, say you put a deadline, like I have one, I put a deadline of 5 p.m. yesterday. And they're like, oh, well, we're not even looking at stuff until Tuesday. And I said, well, why didn't you put that in your listing? Like all offers will be reviewed then. Like manage expectations and be courteous, I guess. And I'm finding that that's not happening, and that's frustrating the buyers who are then saying, well, if they're going to get multiple offers, I want to put in multiple offers. Screw that. You know, you want to play games? I'm going to play games. How do you like that? And then I'm like, well, you don't want to play hardball too hard. Like, don't get too crazy. Um, but it does. It then makes them say, you know, what is it? My money's not good enough. Or then I get the, well, you know, if they respond after, who says I'm going to want to give them that much money? I said, because then they're going to go to the offer that they didn't accept so that they could accept yours. So like, work with me here. And it's like, it's a big reality check, but I noticed people, buyers, sellers, agents, they're all getting frustrated as a byproduct of all this. And people, I've had a lot of conversations with agents recently where they're like, thank you for being nice. And I said, what? That's a thing? Like, thank you for being nice. That's a thing to say. And they say, no, really, like some people are just getting to be so rude and so nasty and discourteous that it's frustrating people, and it's then elevating this wavelength we're all functioning at, and this like frequency, and then it's getting really confrontational, and it makes for a very tough environment. And I got to ask about the investors, because this is what's surprising me, is that they're putting in offers on places. They're putting in offers above what they should be. Like from a financial standpoint, investors that I've always worked with and understood, they don't want to spend more than the value of the property. Whether they plan to hold it for a year or 5 years, they still don't want to spend more. And I'm seeing offers that are like, well, that should appraise. Excuse my language, but they're like, really?
I am so glad you asked that, because this is a great question for Ben.
Candace, I've been
Exactly what I have it for.
I always start with, you make a great point. As agents, one of our first classes we all take is ethics. That's one of the biggest things that comes with our name badge next to realtor. And so as a buyer, we're supposed to put one offer per property per buyer, which does absolutely put your clients at a disadvantage when an investor that has $30 million sitting in an account that they have to spend. If they're doing a 1031 exchange, I've got 45 days to put properties under contract, 180 days to close them. So maybe they are putting in 15 or 20 offers a week. Maybe they actually have the funds to close all 15 if they all get accepted first off. But maybe they don't, absolutely. And then same thing, now the buyer, I'm stuck in a really tight situation where my agent's doing the best they can for me, and I've got an offer in and the seller says they're gonna take 2 days to respond, and now I'm stuck in this limbo, and if I don't get an accepted offer on this property, I've lost those 2 days. So absolutely, it's an incredibly difficult situation. Having said that, I think you made your best point to come across is I love the saying, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Treat each other nicely. Your reputation will last much longer than this transaction. So whenever you close on a home with them, whether it's in 30 days or 90 days, that closing will be done, but the relationship you have with that agent is going to stay forever. People will always remember how you made them feel. So taking the high road, especially in this market when everybody else is stressed out and pulling hairs out of their heads, which, you know, I'm all out now. So I get it. Will make a big difference. How people make you, how people perceive you, and how people felt when they dealt with you. So that'll make a big difference. On the investor side, absolutely, it feels like people, 12 months ago, felt like people were overpaying for houses. 2 years ago, it felt like people were overpaying for houses. 2 years ago, I remember it was a big deal. Almost 25% of appraisals were coming in below contract value. And then over a year ago, before COVID ever got here, it was a huge deal. We got to about 30% of appraisals were not appraising at value. And now we're somewhere around 40% of appraisals are not appraising at value. And all that tells me, appraisers only work backwards. They can only look out the rearview mirror and figure out the prices. A lot of these institutional level investors are much smarter than you and I. They've got many more people working for them with much better information, and they're all working on forecasts. So, just this week, CPI, they announced 5% inflation. Wow, crazy. People were forecasting that inflation number 2-3 months ago. So they've been making investment choices based on that forecasted inflation. So if they knew inflation is going to move up to 5% from 2%, so what was it last year, 1.8? So if they knew that was coming up, is it a big deal for them to quote unquote overpay for a property by 2% if they know inflation is going to be up 3%? No, it's really not for them. So when you see these investors and you say, wow, they're overpaying for these properties, they're overpaying for these properties in your eyes or these today eyes. They're just 2 or 3 steps ahead of us as far as where the market's going next. So, very often right now, I'm usually on the, I don't know if it's called the dark side, but I'm usually on the listing side. So usually I have to apologize to a lot of agents. When I accept an offer, the first thing I have to do is a bunch of paperwork, well, my transaction coordinator, and then the next thing I have to do is make 14 or 15 apology phone calls to all the other agents with offers in to say, hey, I'm so sorry, we didn't accept your offer. Am I in trouble?
No, God bless you for making those phone calls.
Thank
How many of you don't even
From
get
our
the phone
side,
call?
thank you.
If you've written an offer on one of my listings lately, you've gotten that phone call or the text message, and then you'll get an email from my office and I'll say, hey, thank you so much for the offer. If anything changes, let you know. But it's
There's
just,
so many that don't even take the time to do that.
and it's frustrating because the time matters. So the worst thing as a buyer's agent, right, which I am absolutely sometimes, like I've got one buyer's side transaction right now where the worst thing that could happen is I tell my client, yeah, we've got our offer in, I'll have an update for us shortly today. And then 5 hours later, I haven't heard anything, but my client has been clicking refresh on realtor.com every 10 seconds. And then they call me and say, the property's pending. You didn't tell me. And so, yes, exactly. Like I said, how you make the other agent feel and look to their clients is really important. It really is. This is a long-term profession. It's all about relationships. And so if you're going to be a jerk about it, people aren't going to like you. It's going to add up over time.
Well, so bottom line is the investors are going to do it. They're going to put out multiple offers and they're going to overpay for listings.
We're gonna put quotations on that overpay. So that's the only other thing. Most of my listings right now where I'm accepting offers are either waiving all contingencies, waiving appraisal contingencies, or a lot of times I see the term in the additional terms that'll say buyers willing to make up to X dollars in deficiency in the appraisal, which is a pretty safe way to do it. Rather than waiving an appraisal contingency, I'm actually more comfortable with it on this end, where we've already preset a dollar amount. So if the appraisal comes in up to $10,000 low, the buyer's willing to make up that difference. So we're already pre-negotiated. It makes it a little bit easier and a little bit less stressful if you do get to the appraisal and you hit a hiccup there. But a lot of these buyers are coming from other places where if you were in New York and you were paying $30,000 a year in real estate taxes, and now you can only write off 10,000 of that on your tax returns, that's a huge deal. You come down here, $30,000 in real estate taxes would cover about a $1.4 million home-ish here. Usually around a $600,000 house, you're paying about $500,000 or $10,000 a year in real estate taxes, which is your write-off limit. So that's most of the homes they're looking for. So they just sold a $1 million home up in New York, and they come down here and they buy a house that you and I may think is worth $450,000. They got no problem paying $500,000 for it. Where, hey, this is more square footage, bigger house, is exactly what I wanted. Maybe I'm overpaying a little bit in this market for it, but by my eyes, A, no, I'm not, and B, I'm saving anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 in taxes per year in real estate taxes. So we're competing with people with a different perspective on what a home is worth when they relocate here.
So with that being said, one of the things I want to mention is that when I pre-qualify a buyer, and I'm mentioning this because this is the same conversation I think you, the realtors, are having with some of your buyers that are purchasing for their own benefit, their own primary residence, is that we look at how can you overpay? How can we get you extra money so that you can pay for a property above appraisal? And we have to go through the whole cycle of what's happening in the market, the education, and I count on you, the realtor, to help educate them on the fact that they are going to have to overpay to get exactly what they want. So the conversation I have with them is more, you're going to overpay, so here's the deal. You better love it, because you're going to be there a while. So it's kind of a different educational process, which I think is the same thing we're all going through, is educating all of our customers from a different perspective. It may be, do you, the buyer, put out multiple offers? I'm going to tell you to check with your broker before you do that.
Okay. I would say ethically, if you have one buyer with one set of financing, you're not supposed to be placing multiple offers. Having said that, if you get stuck in a situation on a Sunday or a Saturday where you've got 3 properties and all of them have highest and best due by Monday, it's just a matter of communicating correctly with the listing agent. And just explain to them, like, hey, I've got one buyer, I've got 2 sets of homes. This is the situation. I need a response, whatever you set your deadline is, please let me know within an hour of your deadline. Don't say offers are due by 9 a.m. and then at 5 p.m. don't give me any update or any information for my client. It just puts everybody in a tough situation.
Well, I wanted to mention that because whether we like it or not, I think it's happening. And I think that's one of the contributors to the contracts falling apart, because they're falling apart initially.
Right away. Absolutely.
Yeah,
you've got
within
an
days,
investor-
like within
Yeah.
hours, they
Yep.
are coming back up, and they'll be. It's
I think
happening.
A lot of those are those sight unseen offers where
Yes.
I hate to say institutional level. I'd say a lot of those are the medium scale investors. You know, it's a mom and pop investor. He's got 5 or 6 other rental properties, and you know he's got money to spend. Maybe he does have money to buy 2 houses, but he has his agent write 5 offers in one day, and then now 2 days later, 3 of them get accepted at once, and he has to pick 1 or 2 of those 3, or he's never been to the property, which is something I highly recommend against, is sight unseen offers. I'll tell you, as a listing agent, if I don't see you somewhere in my showing records for my Supra, I'm not going to accept a sight unseen offer, because
I've had many agents start putting that in their realtor comments that they're like, please do not submit any sight unseen offers, or you must have shown the property to be able to submit an offer. Things like that are starting to come up a lot more often, I'm seeing.
I agree with you 100%, because that's the properties that you're seeing where they go pending and 2 hours later they're back on the market, and you're like, what happened here? And yes, exactly that. But a lot of that is, again, a good listing agent that's representing their client well is going to, before I ever accept an offer, who am I going to talk to? The first person I'm going to talk to, actually, before I talk to the realtor, is this lady right here. They're good, because I got an offer yesterday with a 25-day closing written on the contract, and it was a financing, not to pick on any big names, Bank of America. And I was like, there's not a chance. And I don't know, it's going to be cold in hell when Bank of America starts closing loans in 25 days. So sure enough, I called the mortgage broker, like, just so you know, this is the offer that I have. I have a pre-approval letter with your name. I just want to verify the pre-approval letter. And I was just checking what your timeframes are. And sure enough, like, that must have been a typo. You know, we're averaging, you know, on a fast closing, maybe 35 days, but go ahead and put 45 on the contract to be safe. So a good listing agent is calling that lender first to verify the pre-approval and verify, make sure the terms are in line, because I'd rather find out today than 40 days from now when we were supposed to close last week. And number 2 is you call that agent. Hey, has your client seen the home? If they haven't, get them there today. You're one of our top 2 or 3 offers. I'm going to make a decision in the next 3 hours. How fast can you drive them to that house before I give you an answer on your offer? Because again, otherwise we're just wasting everybody's time. And then when you hit that little transaction history button on your MLS listing and you see the property went like pending, active, pending, active, pending, active, price change, price drop, price increase, which I've seen more than anything right now, which is crazy. Price drop, price increase, pending, active. That's a lot of work. I feel bad for Kevin in my office. He's clicking all these buttons. And B, now it's just making a mess of the market.
Okay, I want to dive into another thing that I want to have a little conversation about, because there's pros and cons with this as well. But I will tell you that what I'm seeing from my side of it as a lender is, as much as these big investors are throwing out these over listed price properties, I right now have 2 under contract FHA, 1 at list price, which did appraise,
Nice.
and 1 under list price. And it was a situation where the buyer put in the offer because that really was her maximum. Now we are talking FHA with down payment assistance.
Nice.
That was all she could afford. She put in the offer. The seller said, no way, no way. The listing agent contacted the seller about 30 minutes later and said, you have to read their buyer letter. Based on that, they took the offer, $10,000 under list price. I'm getting ready to close her next week.
Aww.
So I mentioned that because in both of those situations, they wrote a letter. But Candace, you and I have discussed that letter is, and NAR doesn't like it, National Association of Realtors, they don't like it at all. And it's a double-edged sword. Am I correct, Candace?
Yeah, it is. God, freaking boohoo letters. So,
They
so
can
I've
go
had,
either way.
They can, and I had one buyer that put in an offer, and the listing agent, because our offer was not the first one submitted, he was basically threatening not to present it. Like he was going to present the one that came in 45 minutes before us, and share it with the seller and not present multiples at the same time. So I don't know what his process was, but he's like, please get your buyer to write me a boohoo letter so I can share it with the seller, and then we'll present your offer at the same time. And I'm like, okay. But we did this and we still didn't get it. But these boohoo letters, like I've explained it, I've had buyers ask me, because if you go online and you start searching, like, how do I get my offer accepted in a tight market? That's the kind of articles that are coming up from the Motley Fools and all the other web resources out there. So buyers are now asking me, should I, can I do this letter? Is it going to make my offer get accepted? I'm like, it's a double-edged sword. They could choose not to accept your offer. They could choose not to accept your offer because of what's in that letter. Like, oh, geez, Diana, the example you gave is the example that's always shared. And that is, I can see my kids running down the hall at Christmas. Well, now you've put it out there that you've got a family, multiple kids, you're tossing them in this house, and you're Christian. So are they now going to have a bias against you because of that? Like, oh, well, this Christian could pay more. I don't know why they're under offering on my property, or any kind of craziness like that. Like it's tough. And I don't know if I agree with them or not, but I don't know. That just gets weird.
Did we have any comments from the audience on those buyers' letters?
I
Anybody
do.
else? Yeah, Martha.
I've used it, but I also understand NAR's problem with it. And I know it is a big risk, because the minute somebody decides that there was a real discrimination in why they accepted the offer because of that letter versus accepting a higher offer, we're all in big trouble.
That is
And I
correct.
just choose not to be in that position.
And that's
Not
what
to say I won't verbally tell the other agent, but nothing in writing.
So I will.
Yeah, it becomes a voiceover.
I'm like cringing in it. So I've got 9 buyer's agents underneath me now, and they're all wonderful. I like to think they're very well trained. And one of the biggest things we coach is choosing your discussions, especially what you're writing in an email or text message, whether it's intentional or not. If you're mentioning any protected class and it can be misconstrued anyhow, which way that they were discriminated against, now you've just invited an FHA or Federal Housing Administration complaint. Hold on, who's the other one that files the complaints? But anyways, long story short, if you're going to use the letters, I don't have an issue with them. But as a buyer's agent, you just need to be careful how you present it. So I can't make a phone call to the agent and ramble on about how their synagogue is right next door and that's why they should get this home. But if they want to write a letter that talks about the local daycare that their kid goes to, then absolutely. My agents are basically taught if there is a letter and anything in the letter even talks about familial status, which is one of the silly ones people don't think about. Like, people say like, oh, how big is your family moving in? You don't realize that's a violation. You cannot say that. So when you get one of those letters, the best thing to do is submit it with the offer nicely, call the agent, let them know they've got the letter coming in. But you need to be really careful how you present, how you try to portray your clients. Because as a realtor, if my client never writes the letter, in theory, as a buyer's agent, when I'm talking to that listing agent, I should still be helping convince that listing agent that we're a good offer to accept, right? You want to work with me. I'm experienced. We're going to get the deal closed. I've got a great lender. We're working with a great product. My client's pre-approved. They're going to love this home. There's lots of things I can do to try to convey to accept this offer and that we're a serious buyer. But I just need to be careful that I do not touch on one of those protected classes.
Absolutely.
You're just walking right into a hornet's nest with it. So forward the letter,
Absolutely.
convey confidence in your client, but really you need to avoid those sticky situations and some of those questions because it will come back to get you.
And I will tell you in those instances, this was nothing I recommended. I didn't even know. As a matter of fact, I asked, why do you think the offer got accepted? Because especially the one that was $10,000 under appraisal. Really, I thought second house she looked at. Wow, miracles. And I mentioned that too, because that's the other thing. we know all of the things we're up against. We know all the different categories of people out there buying, but don't let it stop you in writing these offers. We just need to do business differently.
That's a good way. And the only thing I'll finish off to make you feel better is investor versus owner occupant is not a protected class. So if that does make you feel better, that will help a lot of times where absolutely a seller, you know, especially they built this home 20 years ago and they picked out the floor, the tile, the ceilings. And then we've got a bunch of offers and 2 of them are within a couple $1,000s of each other. And 1 is an owner occupant. I'm careful not to say whether it's a family or not. You say this is an owner occupant and 1 is an investor. Absolutely. You can present your offer that way and say, yep, this is going to an owner occupant. They're going to love this home. They're really excited to meet all the
I
neighbors.
totally agree with that because there are a lot of
Absolutely.
owners that don't want investors.
That's correct. So investor is not a protected class. You can quote me on that one. None of the other ones.
He knows because he's an investor.
Yeah, I hate me also sometimes. But yes, owner occupant's a great way to present your offers and absolutely convey that with your offer in the email because it matters to some listing agents. It matters to some owners and to some sellers.
And that's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation, because we see what's working, but we can also see some of these gray areas. So our job is to figure out how do we adjust and be ethical, legal, ethical, compliant, and continue to do business. So does anybody else have any comments they want to add? We've covered a lot of information today. Let me see, what's our time? Oh yeah, we're running late on this.
Oh, I just want to say something.
Oh, come on.
Okay.
I don't recommend cutting out inspections.
No,
Oh, no,
never.
Don't do
Never.
that. No. Even if you waive an inspection contingency, which I have seen before, absolutely still schedule your inspection, especially your 4-point. I beat that with a dead
Insurance
horse.
alone.
Because A is on top of it, as an agent, how often, 3 months from now they come in and this outlet doesn't work right or their toilet's making a gurgling noise. And now they're mad at you as the buyer's agent. They're like, well, my realtor said that the only way to get this offer accepted is if I didn't do an inspection. Nope, that's not what I said at all. I said, you can waive your inspection contingency. We'll deal with whatever we find. But A, you're going to need those insurance reports anyways to get your insurance done correctly. And B, I'm not Superman. I can't see through walls. This looks like a nice house, but you need a professional home inspector. I've been an investor for years. I don't know how many houses I've bought and sold, 600, 700 houses. And guess who still pays for a professional home inspection on my properties? This guy.
Every time.
Yeah. So absolutely convey that to your clients, whether you waive the inspection or not, inspection period, get an inspection done so you know what's going on. That's the same thing as the appraisal contingency is another misconception I keep hearing from other, I don't want to say younger, we'll say newer agents, greener agents, where they say, oh, they waived their appraisal contingency. Okay, great. They still need to have an appraisal. The bank's not going to write a loan without an appraisal. So even if their appraisal comes in low or they waive the contingency, it still has to happen. So the same thing with your inspections. If you have a 0-day inspection period, great, power to you, but get the home inspection done. Then you know what you're buying and you know what you're tackling the day after closing. You know what toilet you're fixing, you know what panel you're switching out, and you know what insurance policy is getting bound on your property so it doesn't get canceled 30 days later, which I deal with all the time.
So to layer onto that, can I just say, like, the way that I always put it to my buyer is I'm like, you're getting a home inspection. It's going to tell you the worst of the worst, but it's also your planning guide. So you want that so you know what you're planning for a year down the line, here down the line. Like, you can financially tuck money aside because you know these things are going to be maintenance things that need to be done along the lines. And you have kind of a guide of a timeline. If nothing else, that's what they're good for. Hold on to it, keep it handy. Hell, I bought my house 7 years ago and I still have my book on my shelf and it's like my house repair guide.
So was there any other comments in the chat or Martha Ann, Andrew Cabot? Did either of you have anything you wanted to comment on, add to? Questions, comments from the chat?
It just makes me very nervous when I see people not getting inspections.
Oh, I know. Yeah, really.
As a realtor, my number one goal is just not to be involved in any lawsuits ever. And anytime you see those, I hate to use the word gray area, but you see those situations like, I don't like this. There's an extra form at another brokerage that they make everybody sign now because you did this one time. So yeah, when you get in those areas, that's the time where you want to advise your client, but having something in writing or pushing them out really
I
makes a
have
big difference.
question.
I
Amen.
love questions.
Question from the peanut gallery. When you waive the contingent on the inspection,
Mhm.
do you have so many weeks to work on that? Is it a year? How long do they have to find these little problems that, that they need taken care of?
Inspector.
You're good. So it's right. So Steven's question was a great one. Was if they waive their contingencies, how long is that for, or when does that happen? And long story short is when you submit the offer, that offer you have boxes checked whether you've got contingencies or no contingencies for inspections, appraisal, financing. So I got a lot of clients right now where under your financing section, which is I believe 8 on the contract, if I remember correctly, you've got A, which is cash, no contingencies, or B, financing, and then you check off FHA, VA, etc. Well, I've got a lot of people using financing, but guess what they're checking off? They're checking off A for cash with no contingencies. So it means they don't have a financing contingency if they can't get a loan for whatever reason, if the appraisal fails, if the appraisal inspection fails for VA. But basically, I'm gonna say 95% of contracts in Florida are written on an as-is contract. So once you close, you're closed. You're not going back 9 months later and saying the seller should have known that this was here. You own it. It's yours now. Now it's part of the adventure.
So it brings me to thanking our guests for coming because we have a couple of handy people here. Handy Max, we're looking to bring them aboard as a member, and they're construction smart.
Oh, there you go.
So they're not painters that just are handyman. They're actually construction people. So I like that. That's even better. Thank you.
No,
I didn't know that.
I will circle back to Candace's idea where on your home inspection report, usually your inspector, which I know Jay, I've seen a bunch of his reports, they'll have things in red that have to be fixed right away. And then I'll have a bunch of other things that'll say, this is deferred maintenance or things you need to be aware of.
A honey-do list.
A honey-do list. And guess what? It's already printed out with Jay. Jay made it all pretty with photos so you can't fix the wrong cabinet, and literally just rip off those pages of the report and hand it straight to the handyman. Say, hey, you got a long Saturday. Here's all the things. Have a great one.
Okay, any other questions, comments from our group? Candace, I really want to thank you for attending and sharing. Rob, thank you so much. Martha Vasquez, Martha Ann Garabedian, Andy Cabot, and of course, Ben Kokenauer. Thank you all for participating. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jay so we can continue with the rest of our
Sounds
meeting.
great.
Thank you, guys.
Can't wait to do